The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. It is Friday, April 12th, the final regular season weekend. The final weekend of the regular season is here. That's what I was trying to say. Next week we'll be shifting gears toward the playoffs, which are set to start on April 20th. But in the meantime, let me welcome in my guest, Nick Martin from the Action Network's Line Change Hockey Podcast. How you doing, Nick?
Doing good. I'm with you. You know, the regular season has been great, but it's feeling like it's dragging a little bit. And
yeah, it was great. It was great, Nick. Let's make that clear. It was great, but I've been getting my teeth kicked out over the last few weeks. So yeah, at one point I was up over the 20 unit mark. Now probably I think down just under the 10 unit mark on the season, which is pretty frustrating. Yeah, I can't stand the dog days of the NHL regular season. So I'm looking forward to the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, that's a ringing endorsement for the show today. But I'm with you. I've also given back some of the year's work over the last 2 weeks, which is frustrating.
All the sharp hockey bettors that I talk to have had a rough stretch, and you know, I mean, if you're doing good right now, all the power to you, but I'd like to know what you're doing because nothing I'm doing is working. So, the NHL, like I said, coming to close here. We've got a big slate this weekend. Let's do a bit of a schedule breakdown for the final weekend of NHL hockey. Calgary playing their second game in as many days on Friday night against the Ducks, who have had 2 days off. I know Nick wants to talk about this one shortly. Arizona, they're playing their fourth game in 6 days. They're in Edmonton taking on the Oilers, who will likely be without Connor McDavid. McDavid is on the ice this morning, looking pretty healthy, but he is questionable heading into Friday's matchup. Of course, the Oilers are one of the teams that will play again on Saturday. Nashville, Edmonton, Anaheim, and Minnesota will all play back-to-back games on Friday and Saturday, while Seattle and Colorado will play 2 games on Saturday and Sunday. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. You can take a screenshot and have a look at it later, or check out Jeff Vayette's article at canadasportsbetting.ca, where he breaks down the entire week's NHL schedule, including all of the rest mismatches. But I factor this into my handicap, and we'll get into the projections for Friday night. The big story here, Nick, is no Connor McDavid, looks like, once again for the Edmonton Oilers. The Coyotes, they've been on a bit of a roll lately after losing 14 in a row. They've gone 11-10 straight up in their last 21 games, and they've been pretty hot offensively lately as well. They've scored 4 or more goals in 6 out of their last 8 games, but there's a big difference between Karel Vejmelka and Connor Ingram, and Vejmelka is likely to start tonight for the Coyotes. Do you have any thoughts on this game? What kind of impact not having McDavid in the lineup will have on the Edmonton Oilers? Of course, they put up 5 without McDavid against Vegas on Wednesday, but historically they have not been great offensively without Connor in the lineup.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things. You see this a lot, like that Leafs thing we talked about with Morgan Riley and all these teams. I know there's been periods where Pittsburgh has done, better without Crosby in their history, which I think it's just one of those things that you just, in a small sample, I don't think you can count on. The group clearly kind of got together and played a really strong team effort on Wednesday, but also I think obviously it does hurt without McDavid. So I didn't really have much on this game. I think Arizona's just been scrappy enough that I don't quite want to fade them, especially like you said with Vejmelka. And I'm already excited for looking at the final game at the Mullet. These teams play next week.
Yeah.
And I am hoping that the Coyotes open is just a huge underdog in that game, because I do want to target them there, given the way that they've been playing and the way they've been playing at home. I think that'll be a fun bet that hopefully will open at a big number. So I'm already kind of mentally preparing for that one. But aside from that, I didn't really have much else. I liked Kane to go over his shot prop the other night once McDavid was confirmed out.
So that's been adjusted probably.
Yeah, it has. It was plus 100 for most of the day on Wednesday, and it's minus 135 now. So I don't think you can do that either.
Yeah, this is obviously a lopsided matchup, but the Oilers are 9-1 against the Coyotes in their last 10 meetings. They are 3-0 versus Vejmelka. In his time with the Coyotes, they've scored 5 goals in each of those 3 meetings against Vejmelka. So, not a great matchup for the Edmonton Oilers or for the Arizona Coyotes. Of course, without McDavid, though, the Oilers they've scored about a goal fewer per game without McDavid in the lineup than they have with him in the lineup. But they've only been without McDavid for a total of 16 games over the last 5 seasons since 2016-17. He's only missed 16 games. He's been an Iron Man. Not enough people. I don't think we talk enough about how tough Connor McDavid is, given just how much he has to put up with every night during the regular season. So pretty incredible that he has missed as little time as he has. But that's going to be a tough test for the Coyotes with or without McDavid. Moving on to a game that I know you want to talk about. It's the Flames and the Anaheim Ducks. What do you like in this game?
I like the Ducks. I think they're still widely out there at plus 125, and I really think that's worthy of a play. The Flames have been awful. Since the trade deadline, they're dead even with the Ducks and last in the league. This back-to-back spot with Dustin Wolf going obviously favors Anaheim. And then also, I think to look at a shorter term sample, the Ducks have looked more competitive since they've gotten a couple of their guys back. I think Zegras is a guy to watch. I'm kind of interested in backing him to get a point again. Whether they're just preparing to trade him or not, it feels like he's kind of earning Cronin's trust back a little bit, and I've liked the way his game's trending. He looks pretty good again in a tough matchup versus the Kings. So I like Zegras. I like the Ducks. And the other one too, Gudis has been pretty good on the back end for them this year, and that situation had gotten a little out of control. So I do think that Anaheim specifically kind of has some edges, or like has room for improvement compared to where they've been recently compared to the Flames, who are really just skating out the stretch. So I think that plus 125 just looks a little too long here, and I want to jump on the Ducks.
Yeah. I like that you brought up Gudis. I think he's a great example of, just how like he's a guy that is having arguably his best season of his entire career on arguably the worst team in the NHL. And I think that just goes to show you that it doesn't really matter about the team sometimes. Like a lot of people talked about John Klingberg and giving him the benefit of the doubt when he was moved from Anaheim to Toronto, and it was like, maybe he's just bad. And
It drives me nuts, man. Every play or every trade deadline, everyone coming from a bad team gets that excuse like constantly. And sometimes it's like, no, like he was the worst player on that. Like you look at this year, at a lot of times I've heard a lot of the media talking about how good Cam Fowler's still been, and he's really not been very great. He's been like, and people are just always rated off. They're like, oh, he's on the Ducks, he's on this, and it's
He's
like,
a
well,
minute merchant.
yeah, exactly. And they've got guys who are playing better on that team. Like Mintyakov's playing considerably better. I know he's with Fowler a lot, but he's the one who drags that pair. There's just so much stuff like that where it feels, and guys like Killorn too. Like it just feels like a lot of these veterans never get it when they underperform. That everyone's just like, oh yeah, they're there helping with the developing season, but media would never be like, oh, he's actually played pretty bad. He's part of the problem.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously there are guys who pick it up when they leave these places, but it feels like everyone just expects that as a rule.
Yeah, like Andrew Peak going to Boston. My dad's like, well, maybe he just wanted out of Columbus. I was like, I don't know. I think everybody wants out of Columbus, right? Like,
yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of nuance to every situation, right?
For sure,
like,
yeah.
I think Vincent is doing a pretty terrible job in Columbus this year. So maybe you'd argue that makes guys like him and Ross
Cape Breton Eagles alumni Pascal Vincent.
Is he?
Let's not, he was the coach during the Fleury years.
He did inherit a tough situation. I definitely respect that.
But yeah, that's all I've got for Friday. Not much there. I'm treading pretty lightly as we close out the regular season here. Not Not trying to give all of it back to the sports books, but I do want to lock in one bet for Saturday looking ahead here. And it's a great line by the looks of things because NorthStar Bets, our sponsor, did not mention that off the top of the show, but this show is sponsored by NorthStar Bets. They offer early odds on the next day's NHL games. And with some other sports books opening up now, NorthStar has been open for quite a while here. DraftKings opening up at -135, FanDuel at -128. Some of the other Canadian books like Tony Bet, who God won't stop calling me. I had to I had to tell them to stop calling me the other day. Like, come on, guys. You limited me to pennies on NHL hockey. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want your promotional offers. -122 though had NorthStar Bets for the Boston Bruins. They are in action against the Pittsburgh Penguins on Saturday. And I like this one. And you look at the underlying metrics for both of these teams. You look at 5-on-5 expected goals. Pittsburgh's been better than Boston over the last couple of months. And the Bruins, do look maybe a little fraudulent to some. I've heard that word tossed around. Nick and I were talking about that prior to the start of the show. But Bruins have played 30 games since the All-Star break. 19 of those games have been against playoff teams. They've had one of the toughest schedules in the second half, and I don't think we can discount that. Pittsburgh's schedule has been skewed more toward non-playoff teams. The Bruins, they've had 3 days off heading into this one day off for the Penguins after that big win over the Red Wings in overtime. This sort of rest mismatch virtually wipes out home ice advantage. And I think, based on what we're seeing in the market and according to my model, Boston should be a much bigger favorite, -133 according to the model. So I am going to risk 1.22 units to win 1 unit on the Boston Bruins at -122. Do you have any thoughts on this game, Nick?
Yeah, I'm right with you. I like the Bruins, and I think everything I'm kind of seeing is similar to what you're seeing,
I feel
especially.
like you like the Bruins more than I do. So,
I
I'm
kind of do
interested.
because I think people are just really giving it to them for like everyone points to the center thing, and yeah, it's a flaw, like we continue to say, but there's a lot of flaws on these top teams, and I
Yeah.
think at some point you have to look at the way they've won all year. You point to to this tough schedule recently, and I still think they've had some impressive performances mixed in there. And then when you talk about this specific spot, it feels like there's a little bit of kind of the Pens needing it baked into the line, and but from the
Yeah.
other side of things,
I was thinking that too.
we've seen like a lot of these teams bring really good efforts in these kind of playoff tune-up games. Like you have to
Yeah.
consider too that like I don't think this is a game Boston's looking past. They probably know that this is one of the last ones they're going to play all their stars in.
It's a
So
potential first round matchup, right? It's a
for sure, I also think I mean, I don't want to overthink the motivation or anything, but I just feel like it's very reasonable to think that the Bruins are going to want to bring their top level to this. They're going to have their urgency. And when I look at their advantages over the Pens team, I still think they're pretty significant. Way better back end, way sharper defensive play, edge and goal. Like it feels to me like this is kind of you're buying high if you're betting the Pens here and believing in them.
yeah.
And I still think the Pens are so capable of blowing any game. Like you look at that Detroit game, and yeah, it's a great win and it like provided unreal television. But I also think there's some things to nitpick that they did to win it that aren't going to work versus Boston. So
Yeah,
I'm right with you.
I will say I shouldn't say it's a potential first round match. Technically it is, could happen, but given how the standings are shaping up with Tampa Bay holding that first wild card spot down and the Islanders with fewer points in the third spot in the Metro division because they're in different divisions, it's very unlikely that Pittsburgh will get into that first wild card spot. Their only bet to move up in the standings really is to surpass the New York Islanders in the standings, which will be tough to do because they've both got the same amount of games left and they have 3 fewer points than the Islanders. So in all likelihood, Pittsburgh is going to match up against the New York Rangers, which will be fun to say the least.
Yeah, I'm happy because they can provide a bit of a test to the Rangers, hopefully. I mean, there is the chance the Bruins could definitely win
Technically,
out
yeah.
and catch the Rangers,
Yeah.
but if the Rangers
They've got a
win,
game in hand and they're 3 points behind New York right now.
and I'm looking at that Bruins thing thinking probably 3-0 other, and they might rest everyone
The
in
final
the
game.
Wednesday game. Yeah. But
Yeah, they might the thing about they have to actually pass the Rangers though because New York has 42 regulation wins and the Bruins only have 35 regulation wins and that's the tiebreaker. So They will have to get more points than New York, and that is unlikely given where they're at. But looking at the Eastern Conference playoff odds now, according to the Canada Sports Betting projection model, the Islanders, they are sitting at 95.6%. And that has a lot to do with the fact that, most of the teams that they're competing with are in the, not really able to knock them out of that spot. So that really helps New York. The Penguins, they are at almost 49%, 48.9%. And that overtime victory over the Red Wings dropped Detroit's playoff chances to 25.7. Knicks Caps are sitting down at 19.9%. And the Flyers, they got the win over the Rangers on Thursday, but they lost 8 in a row. Their playoff odds dropped from around 80% to 10%, where they are right now. So pretty epic collapse from the Flyers. Talked about it earlier in the week, how I simulated that 8-game stretch for the Flyers, and they should have went at least 500, 4-4, something like that, about 50% of the time. So it was pretty incredible that they went 0-8 again in some games where they were a big favorite against Chicago. They lost twice against Montreal. They really gave this one away and allowed the Islanders to make up a bunch of ground. But looking toward the playoffs, Nick, is there anything in the futures market or anything like that that's kind of catching your eye as something that, hey, I want to get down on this before the end of the regular season, before the playoffs are set up?
No, there's not, honestly, and I feel like it's always kind of lame to say that, but to me, it
No,
it just
it's
looks like
I'm gonna cut you off. That's what you should say. If that's what you think, that is the smart thing to say, right?
yeah, and this year in particular, I just feel like there's too many viable teams that, like, now that the teams that have kind of emerged as true candidates have all their numbers are so low. I'm like, I don't really want to overreach just for the team that I like. Like, I mean, obviously, we've liked Carolina and Dallas all year.
Yeah.
They're way too low. And then there's still so many teams that are so competitive. Like, I don't have anything on Vegas, and I'm like not excited about that at all. I really hope, and I would love for them not to be in that central bracket too. So hopefully they go out early, because they're gonna potentially they could screw over a lot of my futures. But yeah, I think it's just like
Yeah.
that's one example of how there's just so many options that I think you're probably reaching to make a play, which sucks. I know a lot of people at this time of year, the number one thing they want to do is lock in a cup future, and if you have none, by all means. But I feel like from a true value perspective, there's none that I'm beating the drum for.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, if any sharp sports bettor should be, building their futures portfolio throughout the season, particularly in the early parts of the season, mid-season, it's pretty tough to find value at this point in the season on the, pre-flop futures. I guess, you do bring up a good point with so many teams that are, potential contenders. We could see a lot of closely matched series, and as a result, some short odds on both sides. And therefore, I think that you could run into a situation where there might be some really good opportunities to do some series rollover parlays on teams that you like. If a good team is priced short, you can bet them to win the series, take your winnings, assuming you do get you do cash the ticket and roll that over onto the next series, depending on what things look like. But yeah, pre-flop futures pretty tough to find value at this time, heading into the playoffs. Outside of Boston and Pittsburgh, Nick, is there anything else on Saturday? I mean, you look at the games on Saturday, there's not a whole lot of intrigue in the matchups, like any of the matchups really. Outside of Boston and Pittsburgh, Winnipeg and Colorado is, a bit of a marquee matchup. This is one we could see, we could see these two teams go head to head in round number one. How are you handicapping this one?
I honestly, yeah, like, it's crazy. I feel like a week ago I would have loved the Avs, but they've shown just enough question marks and
Yeah.
the goaltending situation that I'm just like, I don't really want to pull the trigger either when there's less than I need, or I'm trying to limit my bets with 5 days to go here to stuff that feels just like a clear edge. So
Yeah.
that one, as interesting as a matchup as it is, I feel like not sure where to go on it. The one thing I could see, and again, this is a bit of a guessing game, but I could end up being on Hellebuck saves. I could see that being a good game script for that. But again, we don't know what the total will be. But if it was 28.5, I think I'd do it. But yeah, I didn't really have too much on that one or the rest of the slate. I think there's a lot of good games on this slate. Like Rangers Islanders rematch is good, and the Caps game hopefully will be good. But the one that I was looking at is just completely ugly. But I think that the Blue Jackets are a little long at plus 225. We did just hear that Saros is going to play that one, which kind of sucks. And I'm aware that the Blue Jackets are playing with about a quarter of their team right now.
Yeah,
And
they've gotten hit hard lately, and especially with the Boone Jenner incident. He's been away from the team, so
yeah. But I do think, and they're in the midst of that horrible southeast swing where everyone just gets demolished. But I do think that they've played it a little more respectable than all the scorelines suggest, and I have faded them in all 3 games as I look at it. So but I do feel like at times their play was a lot less bad than it looked, and I think that it would, they haven't. It's been like we're probably getting a better number because of how awful those games went and all the guys out. But I also think that was probably more of a comment on how horrible the spots were. They were catching Carolina in a really bad spot. Florida last night was fully ready to go, and the Lightning I think was the easiest of the 3 spots, and they've been playing pretty well. So. Oh, I don't love it, but I think plus 225 is a little crazy. I think with the Preds playing tonight, the Blue Jackets can skate with them and make that one competitive. Also, Tarasov has been a lot better. So if
he's been respectable.
So if he's in goal, I'm actually like reasonably excited about the goaltending situation. So yeah, that's kind of the one I'm making a case for, which is kind of hilarious because it's one of the more pointless games on the slate, and who wants to bet the Blue Jackets right now? But that is the one that I think is probably the number that looks the most off. The other one I kind of like too, which is funny because I'm beating the drum for the Ducks, but I kind of like the Kings tomorrow night as well.
Oh yeah,
I do feel.
I agree with you. That's a short price.
Mm-hmm. So those are really the ones.
I do want to bring up another pointless game. The Montreal Canadiens and the Ottawa Senators, because you brought it to my attention prior to the show that some sports books are opening up with the Canadiens listed at plus 140 and plus 146. I didn't really spend a whole lot of time thinking about this game because I looked at my projections. I have Montreal priced plus 119, so Ottawa minus 119. They've got a 54.2% chance of winning. NorthStar Bets opened up with the Senators as minus 147 favorites. The Habs on the other side at plus 120. So no play there on either side for me at that price. But at plus 146 or plus 140, it's absolutely a bet on Montreal. I don't understand why Ottawa is warranting this sort of price. I know, as Jake and I talked about it a little bit earlier this week, losing Gooley hurt the Montreal's back end and et cetera. And but they still, they played a close game against the Islanders, did not get the result that I was looking for on Thursday. But I really do not understand why these Sens are carrying a minus 178 and a minus 166 price tag. Unfortunately, I can't lock these bets in, neither of these sports books are available in my jurisdiction, but I'll be looking for that price for sure. And if you can access to plus 140 or plus 146, Montreal is a good bet. Do you kind of lean that way?
Yeah, I do fully lean that way. I think there's too many things that can go wrong for the Senators.
Yeah. Don't the Sens strike you as just like everybody's least favorite team? And I don't mean us. I mean like in the NHL, like the other Canadian teams. Like it seems like everybody loves to pile on and beat up the Senators. They're just not a likable team.
Well, and I feel like they kind of asked for, like, some of the Sens media was going around like maybe it's me, but I feel like I listened to like Craig Button and Mark Cathal and some of these guys preseason, and everyone's picking the Sens. Everyone's talking about how they're going to dominate the Leafs and how they're going to be a problem.
Friedman's been picking the Sens to make the playoffs for like 3 years in a row.
I picked the Sens to make the playoffs this year. I bought the hype, and at one point they're plus 130, and I thought it was great. And it was funny. I locked it in once that Vasi news or the Vasi news came out like a day later. And I remember when I posted, I said I would go a touch wider than this plus 130 now with the Vasilevsky news. And none of that mattered because they didn't even get close. So I don't know. Like, I don't love the spot with it being like the home finale and the way that they're still like out to prove that the season's not a complete bust and everything. And I feel like they have some offensive pieces I like, but also I've been sold on that way too many times this year. And at some point, I think it's just got to be accepted that when you're getting league worst goaltending, a lot of the other data doesn't matter. So
Here's my bold prediction. The Montreal Canadiens will be a contender before the Ottawa Senators.
I think that's pretty reasonable because we've kind of seen what the Sens have, more or less.
Yeah.
Like, I know
Yeah,
this year could have gone
it's going to
different,
be a
but
teardown before Montreal will rebuild and be a respectable hockey team before Ottawa figures out this rebuild. Like, they're going to retool before they figure it out. Montreal will figure out their rebuild before the Sens figure out theirs. That's my prediction because I just like what Montreal has and I love what they've got in goal too. So
that's the thing. Yeah, the Sens goaltending situation is just they need to do. I don't know how they're going to solve that, but
I can see me being really
gotta change.
bullish on the Canadians next season. That's where I kind of stand right now. I'm a little bit worried about it. I'm like, oh man, am I going to go in and die on this hill going into the 2024-25 season, telling everybody Montreal is going to take a big step forward and probably, but we'll see. But yeah, other than that, not a whole lot. Anything else you wanted to touch on, Nick, before we wrap this up?
No, I'm just doing one last scan here, and I feel like we hit on all the good spots or all the sides at least that look like they have any appeal. So that's all I've got.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I think the game that I'm most interested in watching on Saturday, just from, just entertainment perspective, is Detroit at Toronto. I think that's going to be a fun game. So Red Wings, they got to win out to make the playoffs pretty much, and I think it'll be a pretty fun atmosphere on Saturday night in a really important game, even if it isn't probably going to have an impact on who makes the playoffs or not, because Detroit is not looking like they're in a very good position right now. They've given a lot of points up that they should have been able to bank, and that's why they're at where they're at. But outside of that, I'm just happy that we're wrapping up the regular season pretty soon. I'm looking forward to getting into the playoffs. Spent a lot of time over the last couple of days producing and recording a video where I'll teach you how to simulate a best of 7 playoff series. So I'm really excited for that to come out next week because I think a lot of people will get some value from it and make more informed bets throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs, which are gonna be fun. We will have some playoff previews, obviously kicking off in the latter half of next week because playoffs are set to start the following week on April 20th. Basically, just have Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to turn things around. So hopefully, some of those matchups are set by Wednesday at the latest. But we will see. I'm sure it'll take right till the end of the regular season, the final day, to set everything into place. But we'll be here to break it all down for you when that happens. So until next time, good luck with your bets. Drop a like on the video if you have not already. Subscribe to the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel. My bet for Saturday is the Boston Bruins at -122 to win 1 unit. Nick has a couple of bets. The Anaheim Ducks on Friday, I believe.
Ducks Friday, and I'm going with a half unit on the Columbus Blue Jackets at +225.
Can't get much uglier than that, guys. Well, hold your nose, hope for the best. Those are going to be some stinkers.
I'm hoping the Ducks one should be smooth enough, right? They're not that long.
No,
so.
I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
But yeah, the Columbus one's gonna. They could lose 5-0, but anyways,
for sure. Hey, that's hockey. But I appreciate you joining the show. Appreciate your insight as always, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you. Good luck this weekend.
Take care.